Hey guys, welcome back to C# Tower Defense Godot series. Today we will be talking about something I've been dreading to address, node instantiation, and more specifically enemies instantiation on this. So why is it scary? Because there's a lot to unpack here, and finding a good balance between over-explaining and not explaining too much, enough, that's very complicated. And this alone would be fine, but also there's just so many ways and so many things to consider when you're doing that, yeah, I will try to do my best here. So anyway, the point of this episode will be to, I don't think we will be making a spawner, but at least we will see how we can instantiate an enemy that will spawn at the beginning of the path, and then it will path all the way to the end. And yeah, it's basically going to be something we can reuse so that we can spawn different enemies at once. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually go in the enemy GDScript in order to add a little bit of code which would be useful for the instantiation later on. So this part here is actually not necessary to be in the enemy class script. You can kind of do that where you need to, like let's say the path or the world is summoning the enemies, you can do that here, but I find it quite interesting to do that in this script specifically, because the enemy manages its own instantiation. Actually, I will link a video to you in the description, which is from Kubo's channel, and I think he did a great job to explain this. So usually what I do is that I actually create another block of code, which is the same thing, right? Public partial class enemy 2D. And I usually put the extend on the first block of code just because it makes it a little bit more readable. The reason why I separate those is purely because in my brain it makes more sense. You don't have to, like, you can put that in the block here. In this block, what we will be doing is create a public class which is going to be static, and that will be something like instance or create. And it will return an enemy 2D. So let's say create enemy 2D, like this. So let's try to explain very shortly what is a static function. I don't remember if I did that in the series. It's been a long time I've been working on this one. So static basically means that this function, create enemy 2D, can be accessed by accessing the class name, which is enemy 2D, but it doesn't require you to access an instance, right? It doesn't require you to find an enemy 2D instance and use the method from that instance. You can use it from the class itself. The whole purpose of this function is just to create an enemy 2D, to create an instance of the enemy 2D, which will be returned. Now there's one thing that we need, so I'm going to have this private, which is going to be a static, and it's going to be a string. And basically it's going to be the path toward the resource or the scene of the enemy 2D, which we will be able to instance. So here you can go in your Godot thing, and in your file system you will find the enemy 2D folder and the enemy 2D file, and copy the UID. You can copy the UID or the path, but that's up to you. I prefer UID because it's much smaller, and yeah. So we need to give it a name, packed scene. So first, we're going to find the resource loader. Actually, can we call load directly? We need a resource loader. Resource loader. So this is a global class which Godot has, which allows you to transform a resource file into something that the code can interpret. So here we're going to use the load function, and we're going to cast it as a packed scene because this is exactly what we're loading. And more specifically, the scene that we're loading is the packed scene. Okay, so here we have a packed scene, and what we want is an enemy 2D. So what we're going to do is use this packed scene resource and call the function instantiate. and we're going to instantiate it as an enemy 2D. Now we do have the enemy 2D. Now what we have to do is to return it, and there we go. We have this entry point which allows us to create an enemy 2D. Okay, so we can save this. So here's the world we have so far, and we're actually gonna remove the 3 enemy 2Ds we have, and we're gonna go in our script to clean this as well. So here we're gonna remove the enemies, and we're gonna remove the renaming of the enemies. Okay, so what we want to do is to basically be able to create enemies which will be pathing. So if we want those enemies to be pathing, they have to be children of the path 2D. So either we can have the path 2D instantiate those nodes, or we can have the world 2D do that. And we're going to use that. So in the world 2D, let's create a function. Public void create enemy 2D. So technically, the world 2D will just be using the function from the enemy 2D class, and it will be adding it to the scene tree as a child of the path 2D. But for this matter, it is actually necessary to have access to the path 2D node to be able to add the children. So here I'm going to create an export variable, which is going to be public path 2D. Let's name it path 2D. That's fine. And we're going to bind it right now so that I don't forget. So we can build the game. The enemy are going to be gone, and it's going to be replaced by the path 2D. Okay, so path 2D bound. Now, just like I said before, we can actually reach the class enemy 2D and reach the function create enemy 2D, which is returning an enemy 2D. Now, what we do with that is that we want to add it to the tree, and in order to add it to the tree, we're going to use the method addChild. I'm pretty sure we didn't talk about this in the series, so I'm going to re-explain that if I didn't. Any object which is extending a node is actually having the possibility to manage other nodes by creating children, removing children, moving children, that kind of operations. So here, for this case, we're going to use this enemy 2D or this node that we have created as an argument, and we're going to use the addChild method. However, this script, which is the world 2D, if we go check our scene tree here, it is this node right here. And the node we create, we actually want it to be in the path 2D object. So we're going to use the reference we have created here. And here, just before that, we're going to have path 2D, and it's going to be path 2D who's going to add the child enemy 2D. All right, that was a lot of explanation. I hope it wasn't too much. But anyway, we're going to use this function when the world is ready. We're going to try this function. So technically right now, if we do check the world, there's no enemy. But, and one enemy should be created when we start the game. Okay, so as we can see, we do have an enemy which is named Diamond. Pretty sure it's the default name of an enemy. So I think I have actually a lot of time because I went really fast. So we're not going to do the spawner right now because that's going to be way too much. We're just going to do a button to manually spawn enemies. So if you want to try that, that's actually a very good exercise. Create a button here. I think we have created buttons in this series. Create a button here and make it so that when you click on it, it summons one enemy on the path. Alright, so let's actually do this together. First, let's create a button. Okay, let's create a button node. Give it some size 2080 and move it to the bottom right corner. Doesn't really matter. And yeah, it's gonna say spawn enemy. Alright. So now I'm just gonna grab this by creating an export reference. We have a button. Let's build so that I can bind it very soon. While it is building, I'm going to create a onPressed method, which is gonna create an enemy. So here we're gonna create an enemy 2D. Okay. And on ready, I'm just gonna have my button press signal bound to onPressed. Okay. So we can now go in the world, find the button we have created, and run the scene. So I removed the automatic enemy spawn, but we can now click on the button to spawn a lot of enemy and actually, kind of flood this tower so it can't get all the enemies down. And here we're going to see that those enemies are going to disappear when they reach the end. Enemy banished, and there's a lot of different enemies being banished. And there we go. So if you actually want to try to create a spawner, that's a very good exercise. I'm not sure. I don't think we used timer nodes. Yes, we did for the tower. Wow, it's been such a long time. So anyway, for the next video, if you want to train, just try this. Create a spawner that will summons a certain amount of enemies with a specific interval. If you can manage to do this, really well played. And if you just, need the tutorial, well, that's why we make tutorials in the first place. So we're going to explain that. Anyway, I hope this episode was useful. As usual, you can do all the kind of things YouTube likes, like liking the video, commenting, this kind of thing. If you really like what I do and want to help me create more videos and more tutorials, you can support the channel by becoming a member or simply dropping a super chat, super gift, super comment, something like this down here. It's always really appreciated. As usual, you take care, and I'll see you in the next